Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Medium's Table. I'm your host, Michelle Gardner. This podcast is your personal invitation to join me at the intersection of the everyday and the extraordinary. Together, we'll explore the magic of mediumship, share spiritual stories, and connect with fellow mediums on this incredible journey. So grab a seat, pour yourself a cuppa, and come join us at the Medium's Table, where spirits gather and stories unfold. Disclaimer, just a heads up to all our lovely followers. Our social media is a space where we share personal stories, including those of various mediums. Let's keep the vibe positive and respect each other's beliefs. Every journey is unique, and here we celebrate the diversity of experiences. I'd like to welcome back to the show amazing medium and author, Aynne. Welcome back to the show, Aynne.
Hi. I'm very, very glad to be here. Thank you for having me back.
Oh, yeah. Look, like I said in the last episode, if you haven't seen it, I will reference it in the description. Go back and watch. Incredible, amazing life that you've led. And we're only just scratching the surface on your stories. But before we get into this next interesting and eye-popping story that I know you're going to tell, please share with the audience what it is that you do.
It's a list, and I do try and scrunch it down. I am a psychic medium. I am an author of 3 books, and this was the first one, just Who Are They? Anyway, and you can't see it. There we go. The second one is They're Back, and the most recent one is I Love You, Goodbye, which has to do with my husband's passing, and part of which that includes all his many, many messages to me. The second he left his body, it started. So and to this day. In fact, yesterday I turned on the radio. Well, before I turned on the radio, I'm in the car and I'm saying, send me a song just for me. I'm going to turn on this radio and this song is got to be just for me. And I turned on the radio. I will love you always and forever.
Oh,
beautiful.
Yeah.
He did good.
How sweet and romantic. And for the viewers and listeners, that's how it works. Ask and ye shall receive.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And you do, in your first interview, I'm just going to throw that out there, that you do share a little bit about these signs and messages and what happened there with Ed in your first interview. So again, go back and watch that, because that episode is filled with so much about the amazing things that have happened in your life.
Now, I don't know if it's going to be today or not, because we have an awful lot of ground to cover, but there's a lot more how my dad, who had been passed for years, showed up in the new kitchen of the house we just bought and was singing a Christmas carol with me. There's the stories just go on and on and on. So yeah, we'll get to whatever we can today. So
yeah. But it's proof that life is infinite, isn't it? It never ends. You just transform and it continues on.
I do want to give a preface here, because what I'm going to be talking about, at least the first part of the show, has to do with a story that I wrote for Fate magazine. And this is June of 2009. I know you can't see it all that well, but it has to do with the haunted house that I grew up in. And I don't think either of us thought of this at the time, how close we were to Halloween when we talked about this. But this is really Halloween stuff. So get your popcorn, get your soda, get ready. You're going to hear some stories. And, see the curly hair? This is what happens.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. Did you want me to bring up the screen share of the article? Yeah. Let's share that with the audience. So this is the article here, Aynne. So this is your mum, obviously.
That's my mom, and she's standing, and you notice that the cars, the Nash is in the driveway, and that's 1953 or 4 Nash. And the Buick is in the driveway too. That was my grandfather's Buick. So, and that was 50s. So that's how old that picture is. And the house she's standing in front of is the house in particular that I'm going to be talking about.
Yeah, wow. And again, this is an article in Fate magazine from
Yes.
May, June 2009.
Yes.
So you had a lot going on for all those years. This is what I'm saying. Your life is incredible. And that's quite a few pages of that article. If anyone wants to go and have a look at that, it's online. But let's get down to business, because I read that article and I probably shouldn't have read it at nighttime, but I did. And then I had to go to bed. And I was
You should have
like,
lived there. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So we moved into that house when I was 4, and that was right around 1953. And my dad was on the road a great deal. He traveled for his work. So quite often we were alone with my mom. And we hadn't lived there very long before the windows started to rattle and shake every night. And there was absolutely no excuse for it, no reason for it. It always sounded like a terrible windstorm going on. And this was around a 50-year-old house when we moved there. Now it's, obviously like 150. But and it had the really, really, really tall windows and bow windows and the whole thing. And my mom had the bow windows, and we had 3 big windows in the room that I shared with my sister at that time. And we really had a hard time sleeping because the windows would just be rattling and shaking. It sounded like a windstorm, or like somebody was really angry shaking the windows. And every now and then you could also hear like scratch, 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 scratch. And there wasn't any reason to hear the scratching. So first, my parents tried to find an explanation. Why was this happening? And if anybody listening is familiar with Watertown, New York, it's built on caves. And so my dad got a thought that maybe this was some kind of subterranean issue that the house was sitting on, and it was causing the windows to rattle and shake. And no, that wasn't it. So one night my mom just got fed up with it, because she had 3 little kids in the house that were scared, obviously. And you can only tell a little kid just so many times that, yeah, go to sleep. It's nothing. Just go to sleep. And mom went downstairs. She took her Bible with her. She went down in the living room, and she commanded whatever it was to leave in Jesus' name. Now, it didn't leave completely. It did stop shaking the windows. That stopped there. But that was not the end of it by any stretch of the imagination. There was several, I don't want to say hot spots, because they were more like cold spots in the house. The stairway, which had it had a balcony, it had the banister that we did used to ride down, when we were kids. And the whole stairway was creepy. Walking down the upstairs hallway down toward, we called it the room at the end of the hall. It was supposed to have been a bedroom, but it ended up being a catch-all. This is a 4-bedroom house and 2 bathroom, which was kind of unusual for that time to have 2 bathrooms, one up and one down. But and the attic, and the only way you could access the attic was through the room at the end of the hall. So the closer you got to that room, you've kind of felt somebody watching you all the time, and you just never knew when that was. It wasn't all the time. I mean, it would just be here and there. So you never knew when it was going to happen. But I don't know how many times, especially after I got my own room, I would go down the hallway and start down the stairs. And I would take the steps 2 or 3 at a time just to get down the stairs and get away from that hallway. And at the bottom of the stairs was this really old mirror that supposedly had come over on the Mayflower with some of our relatives. I never looked in that mirror. It always creeped me out because I always felt like I was going to see something in it. And it's funny because we were talking earlier before you turned the sound on. There was so much that happened to everybody in that house that we didn't discuss it. We didn't compare notes until much later. And it was like, oh, yeah, that happened to me too. And this happened and that happened. And we just started comparing notes. So there was a whole lot more going on than I realized, at least when I was growing up there. Now, one thing that would happen, we had downstairs was there was 3 or 4 switches, and one of the switches controlled the upstairs light, and there was other switches that controlled other lights, and you would turn that switch to go upstairs, and the light would not come on. And I knew right then that we were in for a problem, and I would sit on the bottom step and just wait and wait and wait. And then sometimes my mom would catch me and she'd say, "Why are you sitting there? Why aren't you in bed?" "Well, the light won't go on." "That's ridiculous." Yeah, no.
Oh.
So I would get up, go up the stairs, and the first place I hit were with a light switch. I would try that, and that controlled the overhead light over the banister. No, that wouldn't go on. Then I would hit my mother's room next, and I would try and turn her lights on. No, that wouldn't go on either. So my bedroom was next, and I already knew the light wasn't going to go on. And it would be freezing cold. So I would just go to bed and just shut my door and pretend there was nothing going on. I mean, it was, what are you going to do? Because I would be in trouble if I was still sitting on that bottom step of the stairs because I hadn't gone to bed. So, and I can't begin to tell you how many nights that happened. It wasn't just to me, it happened to all of us. But again, we weren't talking to each other about it, which is so weird. Now, one thing that happened, and it's not in this article, I was thinking about this earlier, was the Hat Man. And I started looking up the Hat Man, I don't know, I think earlier this summer, because I was just remembering the Hat Man. And come to find out, once I'm Googling this, the Hat Man is a common specter, I should say, that appears. It didn't just appear to me. Apparently, he appeared and still appears to a whole bunch of people. And what you see is this man standing next to your bed. You can't tell much. It almost looks like he's got an overcoat on or something. He's quite tall, but when you're little, everybody looks tall. And he's wearing a hat of that day and time of the 50s.
Yeah.
And I can remember him reaching out to touch me. And he actually showed up in the house that we moved from first. That's where I first noticed him.
Wow.
Followed me to this house, or what happened. And again, it wouldn't be every time. It might be once every 6 months, once every 8 months, whatever. It would just be, you just didn't know. And this one night, my sister was babysitting, and my oldest sister, and she was sleeping with me. And she got up to go to the bathroom, and sure enough, the Hat Man shows up. And I just start screaming that the Hat Man is there. So she comes, and of course, she doesn't see him. He disappears before she comes into the room. And she said, "What's going on?" I said, "The Hat Man was here." And he was always trying to touch me. So for people interested, because that's a whole rabbit hole that we don't have time to go on to, Google it about the Hat Man, and you're going to find out probably more that you want to know.
Yeah, I've never heard of the Hat Man. So when he appeared to you, Annie, did it feel like negative? What was the feeling that you got?
Terror, absolute terror.
Really?
And I was just terrified that he was going to touch me because he kept reaching out like he was going to touch me. And it was just absolute terror. And most of the time, I couldn't get a squeak out of my throat if I wanted to. So I'm really surprised I hollered that night when my sister was sleeping with me. So I'm going to break this up with not everything was awful in that house. There was some good stuff too. This is when I was around 9, and I'm now in my own bedroom, which is a very small room with one window. It's a hot summer day, and I'm just sitting on the end of the bed trying to get some breeze in that window. There wasn't any air conditioning, and if there was a fan, it was probably downstairs. Nobody had fans. So it was really hot. It was stifling. And I started hearing this most beautiful, beautiful music I've ever heard. And I'm trying to psych this out, being my 9-year-old brain. Where is this coming from? And logic would say, well, it must be coming from outside. So if anybody listening remembers those old screens, you kind of push them in or out like this to put them into the window. And then you lifted the window up, took the screen out. And I lifted the window up even higher and I stuck my head out the window because I'm trying to hear where the music is coming from. And again, this is early 50s. So first of all, nobody had stereos. Everybody had radios, but no one played anything loud. And certainly no cars would drive up and down. That would be 10, 15 years yet down the road before that started happening, where they'd turn their radios up. So there wasn't any sound at all. It was just a hot summer quiet day in the neighborhood. So I bring myself back into and the music is still going on. And I can actually pick out different instruments. There wasn't any words. It was more of an instrumental. And I realized the music was coming from the room, my room.
Wow. Yeah, yeah.
Because it wasn't coming from outside and it wasn't coming from any place else at the house. It was coming from my room. So part of me wanted to stay there and listen, and part of me is sad that I didn't. But I was also terrified. So again, I'm going down those stairs 2 or 3 at a time, go down, find my mom. She's in the kitchen. And I said, Mom, I just heard the angels sing. And,
Oh,
she was kind of skeptical. And she looked at me and she said, no, I believe that you probably did hear the angels. So that was kind of cool.
yeah.
I do want to bring up that I am a 3rd generation psychic medium. I can't go farther than that back because I don't know any about my grandparents, my great grandparents or anything like that, but I do know about my grandparents. And I do want to sneak another story in because this is cool. This isn't the house I grew up in, but this is cool. So, and I love to tell this story. A lot of people here in the States have heard of Camp Drum, okay, and Fort Drum, which is now Fort Drum. What they don't know is that property, and it's a big military installation in just north of Watertown, New York, almost to Canada. And that's what I grew up in Watertown, so that was part of my life. But before it was a military installation, it was Gardnerville. You're going to listen to this part. And they, my grandparents owned 2 or 3 farms, and everybody there was farmers. And my grandmother was looking out the kitchen window one morning, and this is before World War II, and she hollers, Henry, Henry, my grandfather. And he said, what? And she said, there's men in uniforms marching up the road. So he looks and he doesn't see anything. He just sees cows and horses and stuff. And he says, there's nobody there. No, there's hundreds of men and in uniform, and they're marching up the road. So what happened was the government decided Gardnerville was a good spot for what originally was called Pine Camp. And I still don't know if my grandparents were paid for the farmland. I don't know that part of the story. I hope they were. But the government came in and bought their farms and everybody else's farms, and they moved into the city of Watertown. But it wasn't long after that land became Pine Camp. And then later on, it became Camp Drum. And now it is what people know it as Fort Drum. But if you go up Route 11 north of Watertown, you go to 3, over to 3, up to 11, you will still see the sign for Gardnerville there.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So Grandma saw all these soldiers training before there was any World War II, before there was any military installation there at all. So anyway, that got passed out.
Yeah. So she had a premonition.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. So back to the house again. So I explained about the stairway, going up the stairway, then the long hallway going down to the room at the end of the hall. And we all hated that room, mostly because it attached to the attic. And it didn't matter what time of year it was always freezing cold in there, always. And after a while, my mother would not go up there, and she'd always send one of us kids up there to get this, get that, put this away, get the Christmas decorations, whatever. And I can remember being a little kid, and nowadays little kids have beautiful toys. Little girls have these kitchens and, the toy dishes and all this stuff. And I didn't have anything like that. So I made my own kitchen out of cardboard boxes. And I would play with my dolls and whatnot. And I would park all this right in front of a window. Now, in this attic, I'm trying to paint this because I don't know what attics look like in Australia, but this was an old house, old attic with huge high ceilings. There was a rope hanging from a very high beam. I'd say 20 feet in the air. It's way up there, at least 15 feet. And I never thought about it. I don't think my sister did either, until our next door neighbor told us that a man had hung himself there.
Whoa.
And apparently they didn't cut all the rope down because there was still a section of rope hanging there.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. So as a little kid, I'd be sitting there playing with my dolls and my doll dishes, and the feeling of somebody right behind me, watching me and just wanting to touch me, and again, I'm a little kid. I don't know what to make of it other than I'm terrified. So I would eventually go down, and I eventually never went back there. I left all my toys and everything up there. I never went up there again.
Wow.
So this came back. I'm going to hop ahead a lot because we're talking about the attic. My dad was never, if he was afraid of anything, he never showed it. He just wasn't that guy. He was a big, tall guy, burly guy. And once again, us kids were gone and grown up and married, and it was just mom and dad there. So she sent mom or dad up to the attic to get something. She wouldn't go.
Smart woman, smart woman.
You couldn't get her to go. You couldn't pay her to go. And she'd always find some stupid excuse why she couldn't go. So anyway, my dad's going. Now, this is old build, narrow stairs for the attic. And you had to get up to the top of the stairs before you even hit a light bulb. And it was just a light bulb with a string on it, and you pulled the string. And when you got that far, then you could walk into the middle of the attic, and there was another light bulb with a long string, and there was only 2 lights in there. So Dad apparently got to the first light bulb at the top of the stairs, but he never told anybody what he saw there. He turned around, and those narrow little stairs, and this big man just flew down these stairs, and his face was white, and he almost knocked my mother over. And he would never tell anybody what he saw up there. I suspect he saw the guy hanging. That's what I'm kind of suspecting what he saw.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, there was a time that he saw something he did tell us, and which also tells me pretty much what I suspected in my own little head right along. There was more than one ghost in that house. So he was napping on we had 3 couches. We had this huge living room. There's 3 couches. We used to say, pull up a couch. So he's taking a nap on one of the couches. And he wakes up, and there's this man standing in front of him, and he's dressed in hunting gear, and he has a dog with him. And the man's staring at him, and my dad's staring at the man, and they just stare at each other, and then he disappears. So, and Dad didn't feel any kind of evil intent or anything, just like, what are you doing there on that couch? I don't know if he thought it was his couch or what, but it was like, why are you in my house? Why are you on a couch?
Yeah.
So, and then there was a couple instances again, upstairs. My mom's and Dad's room was one of the areas that had a real issue. And that, again, those windows shook and carried on too when that was going on. But after a while, if my dad was on the road, my mom wouldn't sleep in her room upstairs. She would sleep downstairs on the couch. She wouldn't sleep up there. Of course, she never would say anything to anybody. She just thought, I'm more comfortable down here. So, but if we came with our husbands, we had to sleep up there, right?
But that's different.
It's different. So this happened to my oldest sister first, where she and her, she came up alone, and every now and then she'd come. She lived in Potsdam, about an hour and a half away from Watertown, and every now and then she'd come down and help Mom clean the house and do this and do that, because my mom was getting up in years. So Jean went to bed. And she was no sooner asleep when she felt somebody just shaking the crap out of that bed. And she sits up, and she can't see anybody. The room is ice cold again, of course. And she just flies out of the bed and down the stairs. And there is a rocking chair right as you come around into the living room. And she just plunked into the rocking chair, and she just stayed there. And the sun comes up, and my mom woke up, and she never told her, not then. And she said, I couldn't sleep, so I came down here and I fell asleep in the chair. Liar. So later on, when we're all finally telling each other what's going on. So a few years after that, my husband and I were visiting. My husband at that time and I were visiting. And of course, we got Mom's bedroom to stay in. And I was sleeping closer to the door. My husband was sleeping toward those windows that rattled and shook. And I was sound asleep. And all of a sudden, it was just like someone had grabbed the edge of the mattress just as hard as they could. And they were just shaking like crazy. My husband's sleeping through it. How that happened, I don't know. But just he's sleeping through it. And I swear I just flew over his body. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Somebody's shaking the bed." He's freezing in there. So obviously someone didn't want anybody staying in that room. I mean, again, my own mother wouldn't, it was her room forever. And after a while, she wouldn't sleep there. And when
Wow.
my dad retired, he wouldn't sleep there either. They both slept downstairs on the couch.
Really?
But this is us not telling each other and not talking to each other. I mean, it's insane. And I've talked to other people who had family issues like we did, and apparently that's not unusual for the families not to compare notes until later on. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. And look, again, we had this discussion just before we started recording that, I grew up in a house, and it wasn't for too many years, but it was long enough. Trust me, when you're in a haunted house, it's always long enough, whether it's 6 months or 3 years. And, to wake up and see someone staring at you, and then to hear things that shouldn't be happening in a house when there's no one in rooms, it's terrifying. But I never told my parents, and I mentioned it to them probably a year or two ago, and they're like, you never told us that. And I'm like, are you sure? And they're like, no, because I don't remember if I did or I didn't, but they have never heard that story before. And I just think it's just so interesting why we don't talk about it, why that I don't know. I can't even fathom why I wouldn't have said anything. But my sister shared the room with me, and she had experienced some of the things that I did as well. So, like you with your sisters, you're all having that experience. And sometimes we didn't talk about it because we were there. You know what I mean? We do remember because we were both there. Mm.
Well, it wasn't continuous, thank God, but it would just be often enough that it would take you off guard because you kind of think, well, maybe things have calmed down. Another kind of pleasant thing happened. This is early on in my own mediumship, which I didn't know the word medium or psychic until I was in my 20s. I didn't even know those words. But I was a teenager and I was playing guitar and singing around town and this and that. And I rarely ever put my guitar in the case because I was always playing it. So it was in my room. And I woke up to someone just strumming. I felt like they're running their thumb across the strings. And I thought, that doesn't happen. A guitar doesn't play itself. That doesn't happen. But the next morning I came downstairs and my mom said that my aunt, who was very fond of music, had passed during the night. So I figured it
Oh,
was her stopping by and saying, I'm on my way out. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Wow. I love that when you hear those visitations, and that they're nice ones. You want those visitations.
Yeah.
They're
Well,
nice.
the angel one and the visitation. I mean, not everything was awful, but
Yeah.
most everything was. So
So can I just go? So how long did you actually live in that house for, Annie?
I lived there 14 years. I was 4 when we moved there. And I left when I was 18 and a half when I got married. Yeah.
Wow. That is a long time to stay in a house where these occurrences are happening. Like usually you'd think that your parents would go, you know what? We can't keep doing this, and especially when the kids are affected and you're still so young. Do you know what I mean? Like you just think I'm basing this on movies as well. When you see that they just pack up and move.
I don't think that ever occurred to either one of them. They were Depression era parents. I was talking about this with somebody else earlier today. And the mindset was a very practical mindset. And they were doing their best to own that house. They didn't want to ever owe anybody, and they were doing their best to own that house. And I don't think it would have crossed their mind to just
Yeah,
up leave. It just wouldn't be. My dad was very, very poor growing up, and to him, this was a lovely home that he was, supplying his family with, and he wasn't gonna book on it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that being said, understandably so, because it sounds like it was a lovely big house. 2
There was,
bathrooms for the time and, 4 bedrooms. That's a decent size.
yeah,
And to be able to have something like that with a family is like incredible. You know what I mean? For that era, they did really well getting to that point.
yeah, they
Yeah.
did.
So with your mum, you mentioned about her going, running down through the house with the Bible, like going through with the Bible.
Yeah.
So she was religious.
Yes. I wouldn't say, crazy radical religious, but she was a Christian woman. Yes. Yeah.
So did she ever think to get the church involved or, you know what I mean, have someone come and bless the house or?
As far as I know, she never did. Again, you got to look at the mindset of we don't talk about this. We don't discuss this. Yes, something
Yeah.
really crazy is happening, but we're not going to discuss it with anyone. And so we just didn't, you know.
Yeah.
Um, the time came that dad had passed and my mother's health got really bad. So she moved up to Potsdam to be with my oldest sister. And we put the house up for rent initially. We couldn't keep it rented. And then we decided, okay, this is an albatross. I mean, it was paid for. It wasn't like of course, there still had to be taxes paid. So we thought, okay, we're just going to put it up for sale. And none of us girls lived anywhere near Watertown anymore. We'd all moved out of town. And we had a cousin that lived still in Watertown, and he would check on the property every now and then. And he got a hold of my sister and said, something's going on. There's like this black gunk coming down the walls of the upstairs hallway and down the floor. And these were hardwood floors, by the way. So it was my turn to go up and work in the house. The other two, and I worked. My other two sisters didn't work, but I worked. So I said, okay. And I brought my husband, Dad, kicking and screaming, you know. And I said, if we have to go in the attic, you go. I'm not going. I made that very
Yeah.
clear. So we get there, and my cousin was right. There was this black, tarish gunk just coming down the walls of the hall and down onto those hardware floor. Whoa, what a mess that was. And whatever was going on, it was gagging me. It was just, there was something off about it. There was something wrong. And I was trying to be cool in front of my husband and not show that I was just really, really freaking out. But I was gagging over cleaning up this, whatever it was. So, and I never went back. We sold the
Wow.
house and I never went back. No,
Did it have a smell to it or it was just?
I don't remember a smell to it. But it was just freaky, just absolutely freaky. I mean, the house had already been in our family for years by that time, and that kind of thing had never happened, and nobody was living there. It was
Yeah.
empty. The only thing I could think of is the Amityville Horror had come out, and that's all I kept thinking about was this is the Amityville.
Oh, you probably watched that movie and said, oh, live through that.
I do remember, this brings my dad into it again. Again, Dad never showed fear of anything, but the cellar windows came up above the driveway. And I remember there was a day that it wasn't night yet, it was still like late afternoon. And I'm walking down the driveway and I see what looks like a man looking at me through the cellar window, a strange man. So I freak out and I go find my dad and I said, Dad, there's some man in the basement. And he's, well, who is he? I don't know who he is. He was looking at me through the window. So Dad goes and he doesn't find any man. And So now the cellar was another place that I didn't want to go anymore either. So it was just, there wasn't too many safe places. Um, to another sister, so this affected all of us. I mean, I don't want to leave anything out.
Yeah.
She was visiting my mom. And again, we're married. We're off living by our, with our homes and whatnot. And she was visiting my mom. And mom was out grocery shopping or something. And she was waiting for her to come home. And after she and I graduated and married and moved on, she rented our rooms out and made a little extra money. So we knew that she had rumors now and then, and hopefully she was being good about checking references and whatnot. So my sister's there in the living room, and she hears somebody walking upstairs in the hallway. And then she can hear them coming down the stairs and the front stairs. There was back stairway too. There was two stairways. And but the footsteps stop because she's waiting to hear the sound. The front door was a great big wooden door. It was really thick, great big thing, big wooden door. And she waited to hear the sound of the door opening and shutting, and she didn't hear it. And she waited, and finally she got up to look, and there was no one there. So she asked my mother when she got home, she said, I thought you didn't have any rumors right now. She said, I don't. And she said, well, I distinctly heard somebody walking down the hallway and down the stairs. And she said, no, there's nobody here.
Wow. And you know what I find amazing about each little experience that you've gone through, and also those of your sisters and your mum and your dad, is that some of them weren't continuous. Do you know what I mean? Like you said, that black tar. Like,
Yeah,
why was
yeah.
that never there and then the footsteps down the hallway? And do you know what I mean? It's like you were saying, the window shaking, and that was sort of something that was happening more than once.
Oh, that happened for quite several months before she finally got mad and went downstairs with her Bible. Yeah.
Yeah. But do you know what I mean? Like I sit here as a medium, and you sort of try and understand the spirit world. How are these random things happening though? Like, what is causing so to start with, you say Watertown. So there's, you said caves underground. So is it the water that's amplifying? Is the house like a portal? Like what? My mind's going, what is this? What's happening here?
Yeah, because there was more than one spirit. And there was one very mean, I shouldn't say mean, really unhappy spirit. And I don't know if whatever was in the attic was the same thing that was shaking the windows. I can't section it out. But the ones that my dad saw there in the living room that day, the man with his dog, they were pleasant and they weren't out to hurt anybody. It was just surprise,
Yeah.
And then again, the angels sang there in the bedroom with me and whatnot. So it wasn't always terrible, but there was definitely this other influence in the house.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. Like, such vast experiences. Like, you've got, the angels singing, and it's like, well, how then the attic, and you just think, what's happening? And did you find that it was mainly only on the upstairs?
Oh, mostly in the upstairs, yes. Yeah, mostly.
See, that's the part I find bizarre.
Going right up the stairs and all the way down the hall and up to the attic. Now, again, the basement was but it wasn't anywhere near as bad as the attic, but the basement was also an uncomfortable spot. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got my theories around basements. You just ask my husband. He's from America. And I said, every horror movie we ever watch, everything happens in the basement. And I said to him, okay, here's a quick and easy fix. Concrete them in and it's all over. Everyone can live happily ever after. We don't have basements in Australia. We don't have those sort of, and I'm like, Why? Just don't have one.
Most everybody did. Yeah.
Yeah. But everything you watch, we'll start watching a movie and I'm like, guaranteed something's going on in the basement. Oh, and there, down they go. Yep, there's the basement. So, and I'm like, why? Who's not learning something here? Don't build a house. Don't have a basement if you build a house. Anyway.
Yeah.
But I find it also bizarre that, like you said, when you moved in, the house was only 50 years old. So it's still quite young. So how many people would have come and gone in that house? Do you know what I mean? So there I go, is it the house? Is it the land? Obviously, like you're saying, the rope in the attic where the guy, obviously he would have been a previous owner, you'd imagine, of the house.
What I'm thinking. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, that he was a prior owner to that. When we sold the house, I was in contact with one of the neighbors, kind of around the corner, a little bit around the corner for a while. And she said, we just couldn't keep anybody in it. The house would sell and somebody be in it a year or so and they'd sell and somebody else would move in and a year or so later they'd sell and that kind of thing. So how I lost track of it. I just quit following it after a while. So I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. So where you are now in your journey in this present day and time, if you went back to that house now, what do you think do you think your perspective would be a bit different?
First of all, I wouldn't go back to that house. Especially now that I'm opened up for mediumship. I don't want no. I'd have to really just put a whole block of white light around me and impenetrable, I just, no.
Yeah.
No.
I find it amazing though that every single person in your family, including your dad, who you said was, a really brave, and I can imagine a hardened man of that time, had those experiences as well. Because normally, children are very receptive. So you could imagine the kids, it's happening with the kids, but for it to happen with your mum and dad, to me, that's a pretty powerful energy. That's really wanting to be noticed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. And like I keep coming back to, there wasn't just one. There was more than one spirit there.
Yeah. That's just amazing. So I'm wondering then what happened on the land? Like, was there more going on the land? But still, it gets me, why mainly the upstairs? Why mainly the upstairs? Were they all hanging around up there? Do you know what I mean? I'm baffled. I wonder what the house was made of. I wonder if it was used with secondhand materials or something that was from somewhere else. You know how things have attachments? Yeah. I have so many questions, Annie. My mind just races when I hear these stories. I'm like, oh, I wonder what happened. Well, how? Well, who? Are there portals? Did someone have a Ouija board in there before you? And then I think, were the previous owners into sort of some sort of dark magic, or, were they doing things they shouldn't have and they've just let all these, I don't know, unworldly entities in, but then, like you said, then there were the angels.
Yeah.
I'm perplexed.
All showed up. There was a whole bunch of them singing and playing. Yeah. So, yeah, how many angels can dance in a pin? How many angels can you get into a small bedroom? But apparently they fit.
Yeah.
It sounded like a choir, actually, or an orchestra or something. Sounded like there was a lot.
Yeah, wow.
A small bedroom. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the Hat Man, you talk about the Hat Man, which I've never heard of the Hat Man.
You're going to freak yourself out when we get off this. You're going to Google it and go, oh my God, this is
yeah. So my question around that is, like, does he have a face, or you don't really see anything? What happens
don't really
there?
See anything? He just is in shadow. You can see the hat. I can see what looks like an overcoat. He's just dark. And I don't know if he reached out to everybody or not, but I could see him reaching out for me. And it terrified me because I don't know what I thought was going to happen if he ever touched me. And he never did touch me, but he would start to reach out toward me and I
Yeah.
just screaming. Yeah.
So when you moved out of that house, did you ever, for the rest of the time after that, see him again, or was that just it once you moved out of that house?
That was it. I never saw him again.
Jeez.
'Cause- and like I said, he actually showed up originally at the first house we lived in.
Yeah.
And he seemed to have moved with us when we went to the second house. Yeah.
And the
But
first house, was that haunted?
not that I am aware of. I mean, I was a real little kid. I never heard anybody talk about it being haunted. It
Yeah,
was just
yeah.
a whole little house.
And I can imagine at 4 years old having those experiences. And again, like you said, you lived there till you moved out. Um, that's would have been terrifying, absolutely terrifying to experience that. uh, you know, and just even the windows shaking. I mean, you go up, kids are sleeping, you go and rattle a window, that's going to scare the absolute bejesus out of them, regardless, let alone it happening.
There's no wind or there's no reason for it to
Yeah.
be shaking. I mean, that's the crazy thing.
And that's what I mean, all in the upstairs, all upstairs. And you just think, what's going on with the upstairs? Because I know where I come from, the small town where I come from, one of the houses there was built out of some ship parts, like an old ship. It was just where a lot of ships would come in to start with before they ended up going to Melbourne. And apparently this house was built out of some of the old ship parts. And that's why the house was haunted there. It was due to those materials that were used. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, that the spirits came with the materials, the building materials. And that's why I'm sort of wondering if maybe that house was built with secondhand materials, or they got them from somewhere that was not a very nice place. Or is it the water that amplifies and opens up portals for all sorts of things to come in? 10,000 questions, Annie, and we still don't have answers.
It's going to remain a big question mark. But, I think, and it's just my opinion, I have nothing to base on it, but when you said, the underground caves and maybe there was water and that amplified it, maybe that would account for more than one spirit there because one was definitely nasty. I want to say probably more than one because the window shaking stopped, but nothing else stopped.
Yeah.
So did it get rid of the one by my mother, standing there with the Bible and telling it to leave? Got just rid of the one, but the one still hung around. And then the one that was kind of a nice guy was still there. I don't know.
Yeah.
This place that, it almost did sound like, a Grand Central thing, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So, did any of the spirits ever affect any family members, like their moods? You know how sometimes when a spirit's hanging around, it can actually start to affect the mood of others in the house. There might be more fighting and bickering and anger. And did you notice any of that when you were living
I
there?
did. Yes. Yeah.
Really?
And I mentioned on another show, I lived with some friends for a while at their house, and it had gotten very difficult to stay in that house. So I went to live with some friends for a while to get out of there. Yeah.
Wow. Oh man, I just can't believe you lived there for that long. I'm just perplexed. I'm gobsmacked. I just think, what? How? Oh, geez. And you can understand then why, when it was sold so many times after you guys sold it, obviously people were like, we are not staying here.
I found that interesting because I wondered, is it just our family? But that
Yeah.
I'm hearing from the neighbor that it keeps being it doesn't stay in anybody's hands for any length of time. So I thought, no, it's not just our family, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if any paranormal investigators have gone in there just to have a look at that. Curious if any stories pop up around that house. Mm. You know, sometimes when you talk about it now, something might come up and you think, oh, hey, that's that house. So, wow. Oh, that's incredible, Annie. Yeah, look, Annie, I am amazed that you stayed in that house for so long. Like, I take my hat off to you because I can't say that I would have, yeah, no. There's only so much a person can take in the human body before you break down. So, yeah, that's wow, incredible.
So what happened next didn't have anything to do with that house, but we're on the topic of scary Halloween stories. And yeah, Halloween's all year long. So I had gotten married. I was living in Watertown Center, a few miles out of town. And my husband's cousin got married and she was pregnant and happy young couples. And they bought a farmhouse out in Rodman, New York, and really, really old farmhouse. And apparently the farmhouse had been added on. The original farmhouse was like 100 years old, and then the other part of it was like 150 years old. And apparently I was giving off this vibe that I knew stuff about ghosts then because he had my cousin-in-law came and got a hold of me and said, "There's something very, very wrong with the farmhouse. Would you come?" And I wasn't that long away from the house that I grew up in. I wasn't really keen on it. And she said, "Really, I am terrified. I'm just terrified. Would you come?" And I said, "Okay." So I went out and again, a great big place. And she explained to me that she was constantly feeling something watching her, which is what I just came from with the other house. There was always feeling something was watching you. And she would, and her husband worked nights, and she would turn every single light on in the house. And I'm trying to think if she had the baby or not. I think she was still pregnant for the baby. They had a room set aside just off their bedroom, though apparently was a big closet or something, but they were going to make that the baby's room just off the master bedroom. And there was a lot of upset there. And the wedding picture that hung over her bed was always going crooked or just flying off the wall or whatever. And it was just constant stress there. And again, her husband was cool, you're just pregnant brain.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. No, this is, and I was so very freaked out. And I said, and I wasn't really equipped to do any ghost hunting. I really was out of my league here. I did it later, many years later, but I was not ready for that. So I was freaked out, and I didn't want to show that I was freaked out for her because she's already freaked out. And she said on more than one occasion, she just ran out of the house in the middle of the night. She just ran out. She couldn't stand it to be in there.
Wow.
So I said, okay, let me sit on the end of the bed. Let me see what I get. I'm just closing my eyes and seeing what I'm getting. And I saw an upside down pentagram, which I didn't know what it meant. I knew what a pentagram looked like. I didn't even really understand what a pentagram stood for at that time. But I knew someone who called herself the Queen of the Witches, believe it or not. She lived in Watertown. That's a whole other story. But yeah. So I called her, and I think she just recently passed. God bless her. She would be well into her 90s if she was still with us. So anyway, I called her and I told her about the house. And I said, I saw an upside down pentagram. What does this mean? And she went on to explain that the spirit in that house just wanted them to leave, period. I mean, just to cut to the chase, didn't want them there, didn't want a baby there. that room that they were going to be putting the baby in was not just a closet, it was some kind of special room. It was really upsetting the spirit. And I went back and told my cousin's wife this, and he wouldn't. They he refused to move, so she had to put up with it for I don't know how long, because we eventually left the area too. We went moved down to Syracuse, so I don't know
Yeah.
in that house, but it was freaky, and I can understand her wanting to turn on all the lights and run out the front door because that's exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And I can understand why they would assume that you knew about ghosts growing up in a house that was haunted.
I really didn't talk about it to anybody, so I'm not sure why she thought I would understand, but whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you kind of have that vibe, Annie. It just like you said that you've had it your whole life. So, and people pick up on it. Sometimes it's words that we use or the way our perception of things, but thank goodness she did reach out to you and talk to someone about it, not just, as I can imagine, quietly, so to speak, feel like she's going insane in her own house,
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse when people don't believe you and it's happening, but no one believes you.
He would have my husband's cousin would have terrible nightmares in that house, just awful. And I really
Yeah.
hope they didn't stay there long. I don't know how long they stayed.
Yeah. So is that area really old?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
Oh, right. So it
Yeah.
was always just settled as a town, or was there something else there first? Like what was it, mining or?
Coal. It was coal that
Okay.
brought there. I know this answer because in high school I worked for as a maid to a lady whose husband was multimillionaire, did the coal thing in Watertown and the whole thing. And she would tell me stories about it. So
Yeah.
it was coal. I mean, for Syracuse area, that was salt, which is you wouldn't know this, but your husband might, if you ever heard of the term Salt City. That's why Syracuse was named Salt City because of the salt mines. That's where people
Yeah.
got their salt. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I wonder then if what people that worked in the coal mines there, whether, I'm sure that would have been really hard times, like really hard times and really strenuous manual labor.
I don't know where they were because I don't even remember any coal mines there, but I remember that they made their money in coal.
Mm,
So, and coal was used. My grandfather's house was old, and I remember a coal delivery coming when I was at my grandfather's house, and he would open up the basement window, and the coal truck would pull up and just put the chute in, and the coal would just go flying into the basement, and then my grandfather would have to, shovel it up into this box or whatever, and that's how things were done. And then he shoveled the coal into the furnace for heat.
yeah,
So
right.
it was a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just because again, I'm sort of go through in my mind, like, why would the place be there'd be so much activity? And I'm wondering if it's, hardship for the people working in the mines, stressful. So that energy lingers and stays, you know,
You asked how old, and I can't give you a date, but I do know that part of my background going back was Quakers, and they were part of the Underground Railroad, which went through Watertown and up through right through Canada. And Watertown is about, I don't know, 25 miles or so from Canada. So it was on the Underground Railroad. So, you can date it from there. Um, and I know there was a battle in the Civil War fought in not Alex Bay, Clayton, I get. It was one of the bays there. Um, so yeah, it's not a new place. They'd been around for a long, long time. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a fair bit of history on the land.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because that's usually, well, generally when you get a lot of activity, it's because there's so much that's happened on the land and in the area. And I mean, times back then definitely not like they are now. There's a lot of hardship, and a lot of people were probably jobless, hungry, if they didn't have work, starving. I mean, there was no government handouts or, do you know what I mean, back in those days. So it would have been really, really tough.
Well, it was. And I remember hearing a lot of stories about the Depression, mostly from my mother. And she grew up on the farm, of course, that ended up being Camp Drum, Fort Drum. Um, but there was hobos that went from place to place, and they would mark the fence of each farm, and it depended on how the mark went. If this was good people and they would feed you, or stay away, they're not good people and they don't want you here, this type of thing. And she would tell me how they would mark the fence, and they would come to the back door and they'd give them vegetables or soup or whatever was being done at the time. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And again, an era that we could never imagine. Could never imagine. So,
No.
yeah. Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Annie, for those stories. That's this will be the Halloween special that we put out. And yeah, just incredible. I'm still just how you stayed in that house for so long and grew up there.
Well, you have no choice.
I know, but you look
Yeah,
back now and I just think, wow,
yeah.
your parents, I tell you, they hung in there. That's for sure. And your mum to stay there on her own. Like once you girls moved out and your dad passed, to stay there by herself.
Yeah.
That's huge. She's brave, very, very brave, very
But
brave.
the giggle is she wouldn't go upstairs either.
Yeah, yeah.
She'd have somebody else go upstairs.
It's a smart woman.
She never let on a thing, but no, I'm busy. You go and get that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, this works. So
yeah, yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Annie. Did you want to hold up your books again?
Yes. Let's hold. Well, I know with my background, they don't show up really good.
That's okay. I will overlay them when I do the editing on this.
And a couple of these stories that some of the stories I've told today are in one of these the books about because both books are, the first half are my own personal stories, sometimes having to do with the other side, sometimes having to do with angels. And then the second half is my guides and angels that call themselves they, and they're channeling. So the second half of each book, and there will be a third book eventually. It's in the computer, it's half done. And then this one is the book about my husband and I, and me going through the first year of grief, and what you experience. So
yeah. Fantastic.
And that in turn worked out. So I am the psychic medium that I am today. I never planned on writing that book, but that added to one more book. And now I'm a grief recovery coach to help people through especially their first year.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a special role to play too. And what's so, I don't want to say great about it, that's probably not the right words to use, but in a sense that you've been through this, you understand. Yeah. And you understand where people are at when they're grieving, when they've just lost someone or about to lose someone. So that in itself, remarkable. And I would be sitting there crying with everyone. I don't think I don't have the strength to be able to do that with people. So, Annie, such a strong person, such a strong person. Now, where can people find you?
Okay, I have 2 or 3 pages on Facebook. One is Anne McAvoy Psychic Medium. One is just plain Anne McAvoy, and one is Anne McAvoy Grief Recovery Coach. So there's 3 pages on Facebook. And then I have a website, AnneMcAvoy.com, just the way it's spelled. And I have a YouTube site, and that's also just Anne McAvoy. I make everything really simple.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's lots of ways to find me. And if you do contact me, and my email is cat9201@aol.com. If you contact me, please put it in the subject line, I read your book, or I saw your show, or whatever, so I know that this is a real email and that's spam, and I'm just going to delete you. So,
Yeah, fantastic. And Annie works worldwide, so to speak, online. So, like, I'm talking to her now. This would be, some of her consultations. So please feel free to reach out to Annie, no matter what country you're in, and you can make arrangements for her services. Thank you so much, Annie, and I look forward to having you back again very, very soon on the Medium's Table. To view the show notes, head over to themediumstable.com.au. If you want to watch these episodes, head over to our YouTube channel, The Medium's Table Podcast.